Welcome, everyone, to a special episode of She Talks Business. I am here with my favorite psychologist, Dr. Wendy Rice. Dr. Wendy Rice, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment and read your bio to everyone because I know you so well and I've known you for so long that if I just describe you myself, I am likely going to miss something or I am going to amplify the wrong thing. And so I want to read your bio because it is the professional and respectful thing to do. So give me a moment to properly introduce you to our guests. Dr. Wendy Rice is a licensed psychologist and president of Rice Psychology Group, a well-respected and highly sought-after private psychology practice in Tampa, Florida. Wendy is regularly interviewed by local TV stations for her perspective on anything related to mental health or children and teens. She is known for her warmth, depth of knowledge, as well as down-to-earth, tell it like it is style. She's originally from New York, moved to Tampa in 2020, and hung out her shingle. She has spent the last 20 plus years honing her skills as a psychologist and entrepreneur. She is also a mom to Golden Doodle and Rice Psychology Therapy dog Milo, 2 horses, 2 cats, and the newest addition to her family, Marty Doodlebug, who is adorable. When not doing psychology, she can be found at the barn or at horse shows, as she is also a very competitive and award-winning equestrian. She is grateful. I love this that you put this in your bio, that she had the guts to ask Lisa Larter to help her with her business almost 10 years ago, and honored to be invited to appear on this podcast with Lisa today. Well, I am honored that you're here. Thank you for saying yes.
Thanks for inviting me. And I think I must have had a typo in my bio because I moved to Florida in 2000, not in 2020. So I must have typed that incorrectly.
Yeah, you know what? You did. It is typed incorrectly, and I should have known that because 2020 is 2 years ago. And in my head, I was thinking it's been 22 years in my head. My math brain is not working very well this morning, Dr. Rice. Maybe you need to diagnose my mental health state. No, I'm kidding. So thank you for being here. And I just want to say thank you for being part of my community. You and I have worked together for almost a decade. And over that time, your input and advice from a psychologist perspective to a number of people that have been part of the work that I do has been invaluable. So I just want to acknowledge you for being generous with your knowledge and expertise to anyone who comes into contact with you, not just patients.
You know, I say to people, friends help friends. And while we are colleagues and you are my business coach, I'm going to be there for you in the same way that you would be there for me. And I try to practice that in my life.
Yeah, well, you definitely model that. You've been there for a lot of people that have worked with me, like clients of mine, but you've also been there a few times for some of my employees when they have been struggling and have had safe, confidential, and helpful conversations with them. And so I think that's just a testament to the fact that not only do you care about your patients, but you care about your work and how it impacts people in the world as a whole. So let's talk about your work. Go ahead.
I hate to see people suffering. And if I can help or point them in the right direction, I don't want to see animals suffer and I don't want to see people suffer. So that's why I do this.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your business. You've been in business since 2000, which is in Tampa.
Yeah, I think so. I was in business in New York City for a while. And then when I moved to Tampa, I think I started private practice in 2001. So yeah, coming up on 22 years.
22 years. And tell us a little bit about your practice, because a lot of times when people think private practice, they think, oh, it's just you hung up a shingle, but you actually have a team.
Yeah, I did. When I moved to Florida, my brother said, just hang up a shingle, you'll be fine. So I started by hanging up a shingle, and over time, developed a good reputation and started having more business than I could handle, so I guess that's the principle of supply and demand, and I couldn't meet the demand. And so I brought on some part-time people and did a mishmash together, but I was still returning all my own calls and doing all my own scheduling. And I'd say do my own billing, but probably I wasn't. So
Forgetting to bill people.
Yeah, I was listening to you with Colleen Francis. I was leaving gobs of money on the table because it's uncomfortable to ask people for money, and my organizational skills precluded some of my billing. So, but over time, I met somebody who came to me and she wanted to talk to me about her business. And all I was interested in was that she had a business. Like, she wanted to talk to me about what she did as a behavior therapist. And I was so struck by the fact that she had all these systems and she seemed to be an adult and knew what she was doing. And that's what led me to find a business coach. And now my business is, I currently have 2 locations, thanks to your courage and your ability to help me have courage. And I have 10 or
2
12
locations
employees.
in buildings that you own.
2 locations in buildings that I own. And I have a lot of W-2 employees, which in the United States means that, I'm responsible for, half their taxes. And, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So at what stage in your business, because I know you worked with coaches before you worked with me. So what stage of your business did you realize that you needed help? What made you make the decision to invest in yourself by working with a coach? Because I think a lot of people and people listening, they don't really know when is the right time to do it.
So I had a part-time administrative person working for me, or a full-time, I don't remember at that point. And then I probably had 1 or 2 therapists working for me, but I don't remember 100%, but I remember that woman came to me and I was so impressed that she knew what she was talking about, and I had seen my P&Ls, but I didn't know how to read them. I certainly didn't know what a balance sheet was. I didn't know how to do a budget. There was just so many things that people in business seem to know how to do. And I was in practice, but I didn't think of myself as a business person. And I needed to, because they don't teach you that. I have 5 years of graduate school and a year of additional, training after that. And they don't teach you any of that. So I think it was when suddenly I have employees, I have a business, and I know nothing about business.
Right. And your business is a bit of a tricky business because you're in healthcare in the sense that you're helping people. And so your goal is to help them get well. Your goal is not to expand business and drive revenues. So while you want to have a healthy business, a healthy practice that is generating enough revenue to support your expenses and the cost of having clinicians, et cetera, it's okay. We're dog friendly. Don't worry. My dogs bark too. There's a balance, right? Because it's not ethical for you to try to sell to patients when they don't need something. Whereas in a lot of other businesses, people just try to sell all the time. So how was that in terms of finding somebody that understood that in your business?
So I feel like you and I have had that conversation a lot. So the first person that I worked with, he did understand that to some degree, and it's a balance. And I think what you've experienced with me is I'm always like, no, I'm not raising my fees. People are suffering. I'm not taking more money from people who are suffering, right? So, we spend a lot of time trying to balance keeping the lights on, the idea that it's okay for me to earn a living and make a profit with the needs of patients. And for me, like what I charge has to feel sort of okay. And I've had to grow into that a little bit because I still, cringe when I think about what I charge, because I do still bill hourly for the most part. And it's tricky. So we do a lot of invitation marketing, and, we let people know what's available, and we do our best to offer as much value as we can. I think that, and we don't market aggressively. We don't do buy one, get one free. Like, I don't run it like a hair salon. I don't have membership cards, because people also in the United States are submitting sometimes for reimbursement from their insurance companies. So I have to play within the healthcare privacy world. Even though I don't accept insurance, I have to play within the insurance rules so that people can take what I do and see if they have out of network benefits, and then, I don't want to exploit people's suffering because that's gross.
Right. Absolutely. But I think it's good to have a discussion about this because, one of my favorite quotes is by Keith Cunningham, and that is, a business is not a bathrobe. There's no one size fits all. And so your business is not a traditional business in the sense of trying to retain customers for as long as you can, trying to upsell customers. Like, there's lots of that goes on in traditional business, whereas you are in what I call the helping industry, and your goal is actually to get rid of your patients. If you do a really good job and they get healthy and well, they don't need you anymore. And so there's a little, I think that sometimes when people are thinking about a business like that, they can be too married to the helping and not enough invested in managing the business model, which can make it tricky to have a successful practice. Would you agree?
100%. And so figuring out that balance, and also because I don't accept insurance, and because I have been in the coaching world, and I'm okay as I am, and there's so much room for me to grow and change. My model is, yes, we treat mental health problems and mental illness, but there may be things that you want to work on that are not devastating your life, but it will help you to create a life worth living, more worth living for yourself, or like, I've been to a doctor and they're like, I know you're feeling better, but I think you could be feeling much better. So yes, the worst is over, but let's see if we can't make this better for you.
Yeah.
Medically. And so a little bit, I have that, that's a little bit of my mindset here. And it's like, we could do a good job or we could do a spectacular job. So you and I have talked a lot about psychological testing. And, we do evaluations for children and adults with learning problems such as dyslexia or just general reading problems, writing problems. We do attention deficit hyperactivity evaluations. But there are times when looking at some personality things or collecting data from a child's school and their parents and themselves can give us a richer picture. And it takes time and it's money out of the business's pocket to pay for these instruments. So it's not upselling because it gives such valuable information, and the other thing I just want to say is, like, I can use the free screeners that pediatricians use, which are just a checklist, or I can use a measure, a test that is standardized, which means that not only am I going to see what you're saying is true, I'm going to compare what you're saying with how true it is for a typical 24-year-old woman, which gives you different information than just what's happening with you.
Yeah. As you talk about this and talking about helping people to thrive, it makes me think of, the work that you're doing. It's kind of like, if you break your leg, you've got the immediate care that you need, but then you need physio and rehab so that you can actually, really do well on your leg. And so it's kind of the same thing, right? There's the acute stage, but then there's the rehab stage, which is actually getting you to the point where you can really, really be thriving in life.
And I would go one step beyond that. Having broken my leg, you can get back to baseline, but maybe your baseline wasn't so good. And my experience in physical therapy is, when I'm done with physical therapy, I am fitter and stronger than before I got injured, right? And I think about that for therapy too, where you may come for depression, not knowing that there's some other stuff going on, and you may leave bigger, better, and stronger than when you came in, and not even knowing that these things, that there was room for a different way.
Yeah.
Like, I have better cardio and my quads are way stronger. After I finished, rehab for my broken leg, I didn't even know I had quad muscles.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think one of the other misconceptions is that something needs to be wrong for you to need therapy. And I think that, one of the things that Alan Weiss said is that at the peak of his career, he hired a therapist because his success was new to him. And he wanted to work with a therapist because he didn't want to mess things up. And he wanted to understand more about where he was at this new stage of his life. And if you've read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. He talks about upper limit problems. And so I think what happens in life for a lot of people is your new normal can feel uncomfortable. And if you're not emotionally ready for it, you can sabotage that greatness in your life. And that, I think, therapy can be helpful to people, even in times of success, not just times of struggle. Would you agree?
I would agree. You know, we talk a lot, you know, business people talk about like, where's the pain point?
Mm-hmm.
So while that might not lead to a diagnosable clinical mental health condition, it doesn't mean that Alan on some level wasn't struggling or even a little bit suffering or worrying about how am I going to handle this new wealth. And, affluent parents, we call those first world problems, but those first world problems can lead to having children with ginormous problems. So,
Right.
Learning how to handle some of the gifts that life brings is also, so it's a pretty broad. There's, I guess, people say, what's your typical reason for referral? And I can share that, but the reasons for referral are far and wide.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you've hired multiple business coaches. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about the different junctures in your business and the reasons why you hired coaches to help you?
Yeah. And I would just like to say, I'm not a business coach jumper and leaper.
No, you are like a stayer.
I would stay. I don't really love change that much. And I adore you. So I've stayed. Okay. So
But you also stayed with your first business coach for a long time too.
I did. So, well, because y'all are smart and you know so much more than I do. And I love being shown the way. And we develop a really nice relationship. And I appreciate the support. And I appreciate how a good business coach is really rooting for you. And while you're paying, it's just feels so much bigger than that, which is really nice. And I hope that I provide that, as a therapist as well. So the first juncture was, I apparently am now running a business. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no systems. I have no idea how to plan. I don't know how to read my numbers. I don't know what financials are. I don't know what I'm doing. Plus, in terms of hiring, I wasn't doing any marketing. And that was an important thing because I wasn't aware of marketing really. Like I sponsored some conferences and stuff, but it was more because I wanted to go to them, and I wanted to support the person who was speaking. Milo, you're really not helping me that much this morning, my sweet. The puppy is being very good, on the other hand. So I hired Jerry because this woman had worked with him and she shared his name with me, and he offered kind of a comprehensive starter. It was like however much money it was, and kind of gave me a broad overview and was able to deliver something in a small amount of time. And then I brought with me two people who I knew and trusted to kind of vet him for me. You were talking also with Colleen Francis about, vetting people. So I vetted him. And then somebody brought you to Tampa, actually, to speak about social media marketing, I guess. And I liked you. And she was involved with an organization. And I ended up getting involved in this women's entrepreneur organization. And I didn't know anything about women's entrepreneurship. And all of a sudden, it opened my eyes to running a business from a more authentic, somewhat less traditionally masculine, patriarchal spot. And it was more consistent with who I am and the kind of business leader I wanted to be. And I became a psychologist because I struggled in high school, and I had the opportunity to have some therapy, and I had a really special relationship with my therapist in high school. And there were times when she made me feel heard and understood like nobody else had. And that connected feeling, and that you're not alone and I'm with you. It's not that I didn't get it from my family, but it was just different and really special. And so going to this women's entrepreneur conference, I was like, wow, you can run a business from this perspective. And then I heard Lisa Nichols speak, and I thought she blew my socks off. She came from, living out of her car, not having any money, and eventually, became a pretty successful business coach and hired somebody. So I jumped into a little bit of I wanted to be a good speaker. Not sure that I am, but I still speak. And I did a little program that she offered called Powerhouse Speakers. And that was interesting. And then ended up hiring her business coach for about 6 months. And that was an interesting experience. Unfortunately, because of being a psychologist in the United States, when everything switched to electronic medical records, doctors and hospitals were given from the government some significant money to invest in billing and scheduling and patient management software. And the rest of us were not. And so being able to trust my numbers that my business generates has been an ongoing challenge for me. And unfortunately, that while I learned things from Susie, it was a bit of a struggle and it was extraordinarily expensive and it wasn't quite a long enough amount of time for me. And that was frustrating. So I had met you.
Oh no, you're frozen.
To like you and trust you. And I did.
Okay,
I watched
okay,
you
back
from
up. Back up. You froze on me. So we didn't, all we heard is I met you and then you were gone. Can you start from there?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry, I don't know why I became
That's okay.
unstable.
Internet, funky monkey.
Did you hear the part about working with the other business coach and it was
Yes.
very expensive? Okay, so
Yes.
then that
Then-
ended. And I'm still sick about the amount of money I spent there because I couldn't step up to the plate and do it. Plus, just her model was different. So then, what am I going to do now? And you always say that people will work with you when they know you, like you, and trust you. And I sat in the background and watched you. And I watched you, I listened to you, I watched you online, I watched you interact with people. I went to some conferences, you came back to Tampa and you did a full day of training, which I brought my staff to. And I liked what you had to say. I didn't actually know if you knew anything really about business, but you knew stuff about marketing and you seemed successful and you seemed to know something about retail. And
does this woman know anything about business?
Pretty much. Turns out you are off the charts gifted with numbers. You have a deep understanding. You grew up in enough of a corporate environment and you had such good modeling and upbringing yourself as a professional. You know, you have a wonderful husband who has really good sense and you're scrappy and polished on top of scrappy. And I remember sitting with you that day in Texas and being like, look, I don't really know how I'm going to afford working with you. And I know that's something that you want to talk about, but I think I really need your help. So that's kind of what happened. I sat in the bleachers for quite some time watching you teach how to use Twitter. Like, how do you do things?
You know, it's interesting that you say that because if you think about what you just described, that is marketing, right? So everything we do, people listening to you on this podcast, there's some people probably that are going to go to your website because they're going to want to learn more about your psychology practice. When you are doing reels on Instagram and you're talking to parents about some of the challenges that their kids face, they're doing the same thing. They're sitting in the bleachers waiting until the time is right. And I think sometimes we forget that when we're doing things, there are people observing us. And they're observing because they're waiting to make a decision. And, there's always somebody out there lurking who is considering doing business with you that you might not even realize is paying attention right now.
And we use lurking in the most benevolent,
yes, the kindest
observing and curious way.
Yes, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about, you said you weren't sure if you would be able to afford me. A lot of people get into a situation where they, is it the chicken or the egg? What comes first? So do you invest to get to where you're going, or do you wait to get to where you're going and then invest? What are your thoughts on that?
So I've learned that I'm a little impulsive and not always the most patient person. And I have also learned that I traditionally like working one-on-one with people more than I like being in a group. However, what I've learned from you is that I can get an inordinate amount of benefit from working in a group situation. I think that the coach I worked with before you was very, very expensive. And I would have needed to generate a significant amount of income from working with her in order for it to be worth the investment. So I think figuring out a way that you can get the help that you need, it can be a stretch. And maybe for this year, your profit, you don't actually make a profit. You pay yourself because you pay yourself first, like using the profit first model. But then what you would use for this year as profit, you invest in yourself and you invest in your growth.
But the first year that we worked together, your business grew significantly.
Well, the first year before we worked together, my business grew. So truth be told, I wanted to work with Lisa. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. And in sort of our first pre-call, I don't even know if we'd agreed to work together. She looked at my numbers. She found that we had some significant accounts receivable. But by the end of that first week, I think I'd collected like $25,000 in outstanding payments. And so there we go, just paid for you. So you don't know what you don't know. And, do you borrow money to hire a business coach who you're not sure about and get yourself in more, because I did that. I had an experience. My first business coach was very, very helpful to me. I made really good money. It was super helpful, right? And I had no problem paying. The second person I worked with, it was only a 6-month stint and it was very expensive. And I didn't make any money. And I threw a lot of money at that. Since I've been working with you.
And if my recollection is correct, your sales actually went down during that 6-month period.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster. So, but it was also on the heels of making a decision to open a pretty significant and expensive second office without really having all the info. I just hadn't, that wasn't the best thing. So I had significantly increased my expenses, plus invested a lot of money in this. And it just wasn't the right fit for me because I work in a business where I can't sell that aggressively.
Yeah. I don't think people should go into debt to hire a business coach. I don't think that is a smart thing to do. But I think that.
So, but yeah. No, you go.
But I think people need to invest to get where they want to go. And so if you are investing to get to where you want to go, most business coaches will allow you to pay on a monthly basis. I require an upfront deposit followed by monthly payments. I think you need to have skin in the game in order to get results. But I have sat in a room where a business coach was selling $100,000 a year program, and my fees are nowhere near that. And they were basically telling people to go to the bank so they could pay in full and not make that business coach their finance institution because it would affect our relationship. That felt absolutely gross to me, because if you have to go to the bank to get $100,000 loan to invest in working with a business coach, the stress that you're going to feel over that $100,000 is what's going to affect your results, because most people are going to shut down from that. They're not going to expand from that. And my experience, at least the people that work with me, most people that work with me for an average on the low end of 3 years. Many work with me for 5, 6, 7. You and I've been together for almost a decade. So it's not about the first 100,000. It's about the continuation of that relationship and the continued growth. So you have to look at the gain that you can get in your business, and is it going to be a reasonable ROI? So,
right. Yeah. And I can speak to that because, my business has grown exponentially, right? So I finally went into 7 figures in sales, but, I have grown every year.
Yes.
A few years ago, I've grown every year. And, there was a threshold I didn't know that I would ever cross. And I think you and I crossed it in the first year or maybe the second year. I don't remember. All I know is that we went out for special dinners and took turns paying, depending on who had a greater percentage of growth the previous year.
Yeah.
So we've had some pretty nice dinners. But I believe I totally agree with what you say. And I also think that when you ask somebody to go to the bank and finance $100,000, you're not modeling responsible financial management, because, we talk about cash flow. So it's almost like, or saying to the person, well, go back and save $100,000 and then pay me. Right. So when I invest in I have to invest in myself as a business owner, and I invest in myself as a psychologist.
Right.
And I have to sacrifice sometimes for the return on investment, whether I'm paying to go to a conference and taking a week off of work and not seeing patients, or whether I'm going to the mastermind beach retreat with you every winter, right? It's a trade-off.
Right.
But I hope that whatever I'm doing, I don't want to lose sleep over not being able to afford it. And I want to be able to see the return on investment. Some of the clinical stuff that I do, I'm not looking for financial return as much as I'm looking to be a better, more competent psychologist. I'm going to help more people, keep more people alive.
And increase your fees because you are a more competent clinical
and
psychologist.
Then Lisa tells me to increase my fees, and I fight tooth and nail, and then I raise my fees. But I understand now that, I have to do that. So.
Yeah, the more you invest in you, the more value you bring to others. Therefore, the more value you can command for your services. And so I understand that, it's always a little bit of a battle of the wills, but I know your practice, and I know that you are in high demand. And so it's a supply and demand thing. Dr. Rice only has a certain amount of time to see patients. And so you also have other clinicians inside of your practice that people can see. So to me,
and they get a little bit of me when they see those people, and they're under the Rice Psychology auspices and all of that stuff. So that's part of how I sleep at night, is I know that I am not precluding people getting care because I have a range of levels.
Yes. So I also want to talk about having a big goal. So, I interviewed Stephanie Rainey the other day, and she was talking to me about how when she first started working with me, she had made this promise to her husband that within 5 years, she would pay off their mortgage. And when you and I started working together, you had a big goal too. Do you remember what it was?
Oh, I do.
So can you share what that goal was? Can you share what happened? And can you talk a little bit, maybe as a business owner and also as a psychologist, why it's important to have a goal like that you are focusing towards when you're doing all of this work?
Sure. So as Lisa said at the end of my bio, although I think she might have added a word or two in herself, I ride horses. I love horses. I have been pretty addicted since I turned about 7 or 8 years old, and due to life circumstances, never owned my own horse until I was 30. And then my grandma passed away, and I had, a very small amount of money, and with some help from my mom, was able to have a horse. And I had a horse for quite some time. And then I was running this business and things got tight, and one thing led to another, and I didn't have a horse when I started working with Lisa, and it's what I live for, and for better, for worse. And I really wanted to have a horse again. And, it's been my, reason for being in so many ways, in addition to, being a daughter, being, a friend, being whatever, right? It's the thing that I love to do. And it's part of what I get out of bed for every morning. And so for me, having the goal of being able to afford to have a horse, being able to afford to have some time to enjoy and ride my horse, and having enough disposable income to be able to be a competitive equestrian, because, I often just say it's like throwing your money in the garbage, except for I don't go to therapy that much anymore because it is my therapy. And so my big goal was, how do I have a business that generates enough money to give me the time and the financial resources to live my dream, which was to own a horse and be able to horse show.
And how many horses do you have now?
Yeah. And then about 4.5 years ago, I had this cockamamie idea that I should have a baby horse, which doesn't make a lot of sense because 50-year-old women don't need, 7-month-old horses. And anyway, so I was meeting with Lisa in New York, and I sort of brought her this proposal, and I thought she would tell me I was crazy, along with my other sane, good, solid advice friends. And everyone said, no, I think you should do it. So I have 2 horses right now, and a little bit looking for a third.
Which is amazing. Amazing. We've worked together for a long time. And I think the things that I am I'm the most proud of is, one, you've grown your practice significantly. Two, you've grown as a leader and business operator in your practice. You are someone who is always, always, always looking in the mirror. Like when things go wrong, Wendy, you're the type of leader that always looks at yourself first and tries to figure out, how do I do better? How do I improve my business? And it starts with me. Three, I love that you are back with your horses, and you have been for years now. And, I still have the very first ribbon that you won, because you gave me that first ribbon.
From
And
Caspar.
yeah, on Caspar. And, the fourth thing that I love is that you have generated enough profit and cash flow in your business to go from renting 2 locations to owning 2 locations. And a lot of times, I don't think women think about their ability to own buildings versus rent buildings as part of their business model. And that's definitely something that you've stepped up to the plate and done. So I just want to say congratulations on your success. It's been a real joy to be part of the journey, and I love all you've accomplished.
And thank you for helping me have the confidence and the strategy and the know-how, right, to not make too many stupid mistakes and, be informed and responsible.
We all make mistakes. I'm still making them. So I don't think any of us are ever going to outgrow that. All right. Well, thank you, Wendy. This has been a great conversation. I'm sure our listeners got tremendous value. If you want to learn more about Wendy, you can go to ricepsychology.com. I will have links in the show notes if you want to reach out to Wendy about anything or learn more about her practice. And keep listening, because we've got some more stories coming and more conversations with people about their business and why investing in themselves is important. This season is being played right now because I know a lot of you are thinking about what should you do next year. And I want you to really do your due diligence and make sure that you're making the right decisions for you in terms of getting the support you need to grow your business so that 2023 can be a fantastic year. All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.